Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. First off, if you haven't seen my previous video, please do, because that is regarding the Eastern Conference and the wildcard race. So now it's time to talk about the Western Conference and their wildcard race, because that has been a very tight-knit group as well, along with the Eastern Conference. The wildcard race, as it is reaching towards the end of this NHL season, is truly getting hectic, especially if you're a fan of any of these teams involved that are either just in a playoff spot currently or right out of it. Everything's neck and neck, and each game matters significantly if you want your team to have a strong chance at making playoffs this NHL season. So with the Western Conference, it's been really tight for quite some time now, and there's been a couple teams, and I will get to them, that have really surprised me over the past month or so that seemingly did not look like they were going to be in this wildcard race, at least at this point in the season, and they are doing just that and playing above expectations. So starting off, we have the Winnipeg Jets, who in 60 games played this year had 36 wins, 28 losses, 6 overtime losses. That's good for 78 points, and that's currently first in the wild card for the Western Conference. And I also wanted to mention that the Calgary Flames are currently sitting third in their division with 79 points, but because of the fact that they're neck and neck with teams in their division that are currently in the wild card and the wild card race, that can change things as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there, because who knows, Calgary could very well be dropped down and put in the wild card, or possibly not even make playoffs. I do think Calgary will make playoffs, but there is obviously a strong chance that they end up falling back in the wild card spot. So for now, I'm not going to focus on them. I'm just going to focus on solely who are currently in the wild card spots and are right below them. So as I said, the Winnipeg Jets are first currently in the wild card spot. They have 6 wins, 3 losses, and 1 overtime loss in their last 10. And they have been playing some really strong hockey as of late. And they are a team that going into this season, I was really worried about their defense, because I've addressed it in previous videos while talking about them. They lost that whole right side of their defense in the offseason, and what they have been able to do and what Paul Maurice has been able to do with this Jets defense has really been fantastic. If the Jets make playoffs and have a deep run, then he definitely needs to be considered for the Jack Adams Award for the best coach, because he has really been lights out for them in the season that going into it did not seem like they would be able to do much damage. And their offense has been the problem this year over their defense, surprisingly. So getting into it, for the remainder of their schedule, they are going to be playing 9 teams that are currently in a playoff spot. So that's a big deal as well. And when I say teams, I mean they have 9 games where the team that they're going to play is in a playoff spot. So that's huge for them. And they also are going to be playing some other teams that are right out of a playoff spot that are in this wild card race, along with them, who are seemingly in the first spot currently. But that's going to be a tough task, playing that amount of teams that are playoff caliber teams. So we'll see what happens with the Jets. I do think that they will make playoffs, though. I think that they have won me over enough. My only worry with them is that they have played 70 games. So a couple teams that are below them do have 2 games on hand against them. So that will be the only thing that I'm really worried about when it comes to the Jets. But their defense has played above expectations. They are playing really strong hockey with the team overall, and the offense, while it hasn't been as good as what it's been in years prior, it has started to pick up the pace lately, and you have guys who are really having stellar seasons, whether it be the likes of Kyle Connor. Obviously, Mark Scheifele has always been a fantastic number 1 center for them, and so on and so forth. And Nikolai Ehlers has really stood out to me this season as well. So just to name a few. And then you obviously have the likes of Patrick Laine and Blake Wheeler, who isn't having as good of a season as he's had in years prior. Regardless, they have all been playing strong hockey for the Jets and will help them push for this playoff spot. And they are currently ranked 17th in offense, which is why it's kind of bizarre when you look at this team. But they don't have the scoring depth in the bottom 6 like they used to, so I believe that all goes in part with it. And the coaching style, of course, and with averaging 3.03 goals per game. And they are 12th in defense, which is really surprising in my opinion, averaging 2.87 goals allowed per game. So the defense has really stepped up. Guys like Neil Pionk, who's traded for Jacob Trouba last year, really is working out for both sides, and Winnipeg is getting a bargain with Pionk, who's been perfect as their top right-handed defenseman on the power play as well. Wherever they need him to be, he's putting up the points. He has over 40 points this season for them, so I'm really happy for Pionk as a Rangers fan, seeing him thrive in this new role with the Winnipeg Jets, and I hope that this continues for their sake. So right below the Jets, we have the Minnesota Wild. The Wild are the biggest surprise story out of all these teams, in my opinion. I would not have expected them to be in a playoff spot at really any point in the season. Going into this year, after seeing the moves that their GM made from last season, the offseason, it just looked really bad, in my opinion. And then he ultimately got fired right after the signing of Matt Zuccarello. And it's been up and down. They obviously fired Bruce Boudreau not too long ago this season, and they have been playing really strong hockey since then. The emergence of Kevin Fiala has been everything that the Wild have needed to really spark this group and help their overall scoring. And their goaltending at times has been finicky. You know, Devin Dubnyk is not what he once was, but Alex Stalock has stood on his head when needed. So now it's just a matter of finding that consistency when it comes to him. So the Minnesota Wild in 69 games played this year have 35 wins, 27 losses, 7 overtime losses. That's good for 77 points and is currently second in the wild card of the Western Conference. And they have 7 wins and 3 losses in their last 10 games. So like I said, they have really been rolling. It seems like every time I get notifications for a Wild game, if I'm not watching it, it's either Parise or Fiala, one of the two, just back and forth. Parise has had another very strong season, even at his age. The goal scoring has picked up due to the fact that he's finally been healthy the past couple of years, so that's great for his sake. And Fiala is really thriving and showing just the potential that he has. And that trade that seemed lopsided at first, favoring Nashville with Mikael Granlund, who's a 70-point player, is seemingly the opposite now. Granlund is not a bad player by any means, but he has not lived up to the potential since being moved to Nashville, and Fiala has thrived, and I believe Fiala is only 23 years old, so there's a lot to give when it comes to a young guy like him. And then you look at the Wild, they only play 6 teams that are currently in a playoff spot for the remainder of the season, so that's going to be huge for them as well. And like I said, they are playing other teams that are just out of the playoffs, so take that as you will. You're going to have a lot of gritty teams, really knowing that every game matters for the remainder of the season. So they're going to have a lot of tough games going forward. And while the Wild have been playing fantastic hockey as of late, I'm sorry, Minnesota Wild fans, I don't think they're going to make playoffs. I just don't see it. And while they have been rolling, and it's the perfect time to be rolling, I'm not sure how well their goaltending is going to back up for them going forward. And that really is my biggest problem with them, along with some of the group that they have on offense. Their depth worries me quite a bit, but more than anything, it's probably that goaltending. Can Alex Stalock be consistent for them for the remainder of the season and ultimately help them with their playoff push? I just don't see it happening. This is just my opinion, so I'm sorry if you're a Wild fan and disagree. But they are currently ranked as the 13th offense in the league, averaging 3.19 goals per game, and the 24th defense with 3.19 goals per game. So another team where it's interesting, where both goals for and goals allowed against average are the same. But yeah, the Wild, we'll see what happens. So if they make the playoffs, and they clearly prove me wrong, but I just don't see them staying this pace, and with some really key games that they're going to have going forward, I just don't know how they're going to do it. If they do, then they're definitely going to be riding on a hot Kevin Fiala and Stalock being consistent for them for the remainder of the season, but we have yet to see what happens. And then out of the playoff spots currently, we have the Vancouver Canucks with 68 points. 68 games played, I should say. They have 35 wins, 27 losses, and 6 overtime losses, and that's good for 76 points and is currently 1 point out of a playoff spot. The Canucks, I would have said, were a lock to make playoffs if Jacob Markstrom didn't get hurt, but the fact that he is hurt, and I do believe he's out long term, please comment below if I'm wrong on that, but I believe from the report I saw when he first got hurt that it is going to be a while. So that's a huge blow for the Canucks, and can Thatcher Demko bring them over the hump? It's a similar situation with the Wild, where you have these goaltenders who seemingly aren't normally a number one, and now they're brought into a situation where they have to be. So we'll see what happens, but they currently have 3 wins only in their last 10 games, or 3-6-1 during that span, and they play 7 teams currently in a playoff spot for the remainder of their season. So that's going to be tough for them as well, but obviously it's not as bad as some other teams. And they have currently the 8th ranked offense, which is great, but they've dealt with injuries all season with 3.28 goals per game. And they're 20th in defense, which isn't so great, at 3.13 goals per game. So they've dealt with injuries all year, there's no question, with the guy likes of Brock Besser and other depth forwards on the team. And on defense, and the goaltending, like everywhere they have been hit hard, unfortunately, when Vancouver has really been resilient this season and overcoming it. They have been on quite a quite bad stride. So Vancouver's tough. I really want to see them make playoffs personally. They haven't been there in a while, and they haven't had any significant runs in a while. So it's going to be the question of can they get over this hump with Thatcher Demko. And then I look at the other teams that are in this race. It's really neck and neck between them and Nashville. So I'm really not going to give much of an answer. I think that's one you just throw up and see who does better. Nashville does play more teams that are currently in a playoff spot, and I'll get to them. But overall, Vancouver, I could see them making the wild card over Minnesota and the Nashville Predators just slightly. But I could also see Nashville getting in over them because Nashville is more of a poised team, in my opinion, when it comes to their playoff experience, which can be really beneficial to them if they get on a run for their last, 10, 12 games or so for the remainder of the season. So next, obviously, have the Predators in 68 games played. They have 34 wins, 26 losses, and 8 overtime losses, and 76 points as well, but have one less regulation win comparing to Vancouver, so that's why they're below them with 76 points. And they have 5 wins, 4 losses, and 1 overtime loss in their last 10 games. And they, like I said, they play 9 teams that are currently in a playoff spot for the remainder of the season. So that's going to be a tough task for this Nashville team that really has been up and down all season long. Obviously, they made their coaching change with Peter Laviolette earlier in the season. And since then, things have been better or worse. It's kind of tough. They really have been a roller coaster this NHL season. And they have the pieces, in my opinion, to make a run. But their goaltending is a big problem, too. Pekka Rinne is not like he once was, obviously. And Saros has been good at times. Lately, he has been, but it's been up and down for both of them. And this defense has been lackluster, unlike years prior. So Nashville is another team where I could see Vancouver getting in over them because the goaltending has been issues for all these teams, and whoever has the best defense, it seems, at the end of the day. But it really is a stretch to say that one team is definitely going to make it over another, because I honestly don't know. This is such a tight race right now that anything can happen. But Nashville will definitely have a chance. If they get in, then I see them having a decent run because of their playoff experience, unlike the teams that I listed above. So they are currently 16th ranked in their offense, which is solid at 3.10 goals per game, but I would expect more from them, especially from their centers. They have not been doing well. All those big contracts not looking good. And then their defense is currently 22nd ranked at 3.16 goals allowed per game. So we'll see what happens with Nashville, but like I said, I think the only advantage that they have is their playoff experience and knowing what it takes to win and ultimately get to the Stanley Cup, because their core group has all been there before a couple years ago. And then finally, you have the Arizona Coyotes in 70 games played this year. They have 33 wins, 29 losses, 8 overtime losses. That's good for 74 points. Arizona, I really want them to make playoffs too, but I just don't see it happening. Their goal scoring just isn't there. Even since acquiring Taylor Hall, he has been solid for them, but the depth scoring has not been there by any means. This has been a problem with the Coyotes, unfortunately, for a couple years now, and it's not getting addressed enough. They've brought in plenty of different players since then. They brought in guys like Phil Kessel too to help. He has not been anything fantastic for them. Taylor Hall has been strong for them, but ultimately he's not a guy that can single-handedly win them games night in and night out like the Hart Trophy winner that he once was. So Arizona, I'm unfortunate to say that I don't think that they're going to make playoffs. They're only 3 points out. They only play 6 teams that are currently in the playoff spot for the remainder of their season, so that will benefit them. But overall, I just don't see how they get in with their lackluster offense. It doesn't compete with a lot of the other teams above them. And while their defense and goaltending is far superior, I don't know how much that is going to drive them if they can't consistently score a couple goals on a nightly basis. So the Coyotes are 5 wins and 5 losses in the last 10 games. Not bad, but they need to be above 500 if they want to do anything. And they have currently the 23rd ranked offense in the NHL. That's a big problem, averaging 2.79 goals per game. But they have the 3rd best defense in the league, averaging 2.67 goals allowed per game. So we'll see what happens. Arizona, as of right now, I don't see how they make it in because of that lackluster offense. But their goaltending and defense can give them a strong chance, just like anything else. But as I talked about in the previous video with another team, if Arizona makes playoffs, how deep of a run do you see them having versus a team like the Predators, who have been to playoffs numerous times past couple of years and knows what it takes to win? So that's what I would just ask yourself, if whether you're a Coyotes fan or just a hockey fan overall watching this video. But if you like this video, please like, subscribe, comment. all those great things. I really appreciate it. If you're a fan of any of these teams, let me know what you think of my opinions. If you agree, disagree, let me know if you think your team is going to make playoffs or not, or just overall. So thank you all so much for watching. Check out the previous video if you haven't regarding the Eastern Conference, and I will be back in a day or two.